Hello, and welcome to this new analysis video. I know it's been a while, but you know how life sometimes gets in the way of things and everything. So we're going to get the ball rolling back again and, talk about an album that I've always felt that should be considered a classic, albeit a minor classic, but still canonical in many ways. So this is from French death metal band Mercyless. This is their first release, Abject Offerings, which has always been categorized by most people as kind of death thrash, but I don't think that really does any justice towards it and how good this album really is, and somewhat advanced. Well, not particularly for 92, but it went beyond the kind of basic death thrash that a lot of people remember this band as being. So, Abject Offerings, the album can be described as kind of being somewhat simplified version of what Morbid Angel were doing, but with a lot more Voivod-esque elements, So already, on the first song after the intro, which is the self-titled track, Abject Offerings, we have a lot of kind of weird Voivod-like chord progressions, right? Where, they're still sticking with very simple two-note chords, but rather than, just keeping it to power chords or, adding weird notes, to kind of make things feel dissonant or out there, they use it really well to craft these fantastic yet really simple melodies that just work very well within the song, and they kind of work like mini choruses, It's very similar to well, not very similar, but the idea is quite close to what Grave was doing on Into the Grave, where they'd have these kind of, slowed down but continuously driving power chord sequences that would be like the kind of big anthemic parts. And here, Mercyless do it, but they do it with a lot more tact. You've got all kinds of kind of two-note chords in this. But it's mainly done to, create a very simple yet easily memorable melody that has a lot of great melodic content in there. So let's start this off with this fantastic harmony from the title track itself. Well, I think the first thing anyone would notice from that previous extract is Stéphane Viard's playing here, right, as a lead guitarist. Because, he's working with these kind of very weird chords, and instead of trying to be weird, trying to be out there, he's really going for the most emotional approach, but kind of avoiding a lot of the tropes that, come with that kind of emotional playing that, tends to come from like rock or heavy metal, Iron Maiden and all that. And instead, he just kind of finds his own way and really works on that kind of relationship between both, the rhythm guitar, those simple chords are just fantastic, and how he optimizes that chord progression and really brings out the kind of very, heartfelt sensation to it, which is very, different to what a lot of kind of bands within the style. And, a lot of times most guitarists aren't capable of, escaping their little box of kind of, natural minor or minor pentatonic scales, that have been used and abused in all forms of music to this point. So the Voivod influence here is handled very different, despite being somewhat apparent, right? But what makes it so good is the context in which they use it. They use it here to really add and, intensify the song to create, to create tension before letting it go of that kind of, typical death metal riff. But, that's what metal's all about. It's about trying to figure out something from your influences and then exploiting it in a way that has never been, done before. You can see the previous video we did on how, suffocation, incantation, and immolation took from Morbid Angel, but they completely went their own way with it. And which is, to a certain extent, Mercyless are very good at doing this, especially on this album. I am afraid with souls of success. Darkness another element that makes this album so good is the use of kind of somewhat, complex, kind of very quick circular riffs, where it's, a few patterns kind of played in a very roundabout way, right? And in this segment, which is fairly long, they take that one small idea, very simple, and they slowly expand on it. They add harmony eventually before, kind of finishing off on that kind of, basic death thrash riff that still has, some of the notes of what they were playing through that entire evolution. Now, a lot of times, when bands evolve through an idea or take too much time, kind of developing it, first they'll play the riff 4 times without the drums, then with the drums, and then maybe add a lead guitar or something, and then maybe, shift it up semitone, or shift it down, or change a few notes. It tends to kind of feel honestly unmusical because of how formulaic and how, obvious it is, from a mile away, despite it, theoretically sounding like a good idea because quite a few, very good bands do it. But here the band, they do it because they have an idea, they start with kind of slow, not monotonous, but not quite as cathartic. And it eventually builds up into this absolutely insane release, which is so rewarding, so satisfying. And, it's kind of excellent use of melody without, falling into saccharine territory and still keeping within the kind of aggressive death metal atmosphere that these guys really want to evoke. While that was a fairly long segment, I think it really encapsulates what this band does so well, First, you have some fantastic lead melodies. The lead guitar goes through a lot of shifts, even follows those kind of circular riffs, but played much higher, keeps things interesting. There's always a sense of motion. Despite the band being, very loyal most of the time to basic death and, thrash metal forms, they always do these little interesting things. They never stay within them. And then, the transition, like, from the solo, bam, all the way to the spider riff is fantastic. There's nothing bad to say about this. Overall, we could really go into the details of this band, but overall, I think what's really important is that, despite, being stuck within the kind of that form, they always do a lot of things. There are way too many examples of this somewhat short album clocking in around 33 minutes to go through. There are even times where they do interesting things with the vocals, certain effect, call and response, the kind of the frantic drumming. There is so much that's going on, and these are just obviously all short segments that just showcase what the band does really, really well. But most of the time it does take just one or two things that a band does outside of the confines, especially within this kind of death thrash style, which has always been extremely limited, But there are some bands who can do it very well. Sepultura have done it incredibly well on Arise, or Be It Beneath the Remains, and then you can go the exact opposite route and do whatever Massacre did on From Beyond, because that was something else, right? But I think so Mercyless definitely do deserve a kind of minor classic status.
Once a spell
Right, so I think that snippet was probably the most kind of standard, segment of the album. But still, everything's been somewhat done here. But the band, they have their own twist on it. To be a major classic, you'd have to kind of revolutionize the game, come up with something completely different, Demi-Lit, Carcass, or whatever. But here they do it so well, and it's just great to see that even from, by 92, a standard trope can be done in completely different ways, and it's fantastic. But, we could go on for a long time about this album, so let's end it here. All in all, Abject Offerings, fantastic album, definitely one everyone should check out, and see you next time.